All right, so let's go over what we went over today so that you can have something to review. Remember that we use the program Eclipse. Eclipse is an integrated development environment. It's used to help developers keep track of their projects. It's really good for writing the code and also for testing them, of course. And so the first thing you want to do when you open up Eclipse would be to create a brand new project, unless you have one already, in which case you can just look through them here. If you ever lose track of these, you accidentally close them, for example, and now they're gone. Oh no, I'm lost, right? You want to go back to Window here and say Show View, and then it's just the Project Explorer, and so that's going to open back up. To create a new project, you could either right click here and go to New, or you can go to File and then just say New Java Project. Project name, give it something that does not start with a number. I would hope something descriptive like Starter Project 2. Anytime you create a project, it would then create a folder here, which will help reference a lot of the Java libraries you may need as you are programming. The main code that you're going to write is going to be put in a subfolder called src for source. So you're going to right click here and create your very first Java file. In Java, all the files are called classes. So we're going to create a class file. Basic rules here would be capitalize the name of your class file. So we're going to give it a name, it should be capitalized, and it should not contain white space or begin with a number. So again, it cannot begin with a number, it cannot have a white space. And so we're going to say my class. So let's say what happens if I put a space here. Bad. What if I put a space in front? Bad. What if I put a number in front? Bad. Now you can place numbers anywhere else but the start of the file name. And then finally, we do need to generate this thing right here, a public static void main. For now, you just want to know that this is the starting function. Every time you run your program, it's going to go to this function and run the code from top to bottom, line by line. So there you go. Here is the file that we just created. So as you can see here, Java files end with .java as their extension. This is similar to the fact that a document might end with the file name .doc or .docx for Microsoft Word. Text files might be .txt. PowerPoints might be .ppt, while Java files are .java. The name of the file itself is going to appear up here also. So the class, right? The class defines what it means to be this object. It's kind of a blueprint for this object. But in terms of object-oriented programming, we are not going to get into it yet. We're just going to learn the basics right now in this tutorial. So the first thing we kind of went over is this idea of adding comments, but also we want to make sure we understand the structure of the program. This right here, the very first line defines what it means to be this file, this my class file. And so as you can see, this opening curly bracket all the way to the closing curly bracket, everything in it defines what it means to be this my class type of object. Everything in it is going to be indented, and so that's why this function called public static void main or main is indented by 1. So in other words, if you're thinking about organization, when there's code that belongs inside a set of code, then it should be indented. So now if we're going to write anything that belongs to this function called main, main is also going to be separated through the use of curly bracket. So this is the starting point for this set of code, and it ends here. And so again, everything that we add should be indented inwards past the starting line. That tells me that anything I write belongs to this function. The first thing we learned about are comments. Comments are done with the slashes, of course. You can tell they're comments because they turn green in Eclipse, but of course you may choose different themes and the color coding might change. Comments are not interpreted by the computer. They are for you or people that read your code. So all these are example comments. You want to be comfortable writing comments because you need to be able to be, you should be able to explain all parts of the code that you generate. There should be no line of code where you're like, I don't know what that's doing. And so when I'm telling you what things are doing, if you want to rewrite it in terms of how you understand it, you should. So I encourage you to write comments anytime something seems like it might be easily forgotten. The very first line of code that you typically write is the use of the print line function. So it looks long, I know, and it is, right? So this is the print line function, and then you give it a set of text, which is defined by the double quotes. Hello world, for example. So again, it's important the text is within 2 double quotes. So when I'm going to run it, I must click the play button or go to run, which would then take this code. It actually converts it into bytecode that the Java virtual machine can then run. So as you can see, the only line of code that runs is the statement here that says system.out.println. This, again, you don't want to think of it more than a function that you're using, similar to how you're using, the square root function or the absolute value function on your calculator. So besides that, though, let's think about how to kind of store information in Java. Storing information. So we can store simple information like whole numbers. And so what we need first are something called variables, which you may be familiar with from math class. So here's an example of creating a variable, right? Creating a variable. That's called declaring a variable in Java. And so it's always done through this syntax of type followed by variable name and then semicolon. An example would be int my var. So this right here says I want to name my variable my var. And so again, the name of the variable always comes after the type. Int is the type in this case, in which it will limit the type of information that can be stored on the variable or in the variable to whole numbers, negative or positive. Once I have that variable, though, I can use it and I don't have to type this again. In fact, if you type this again, it's going to complain and say, hey, there's already a variable that you declared, right? So again, you only do that once. Once you've done it, though, you can then utilize it and use it, such as giving it a value, or in other words, assigning it a value. So this line of code right here is called the assignment operator, right? Assignment operator in Java is done with 1 equals sign. So you are assigning the value of my var to be 5. If I were then to use the print function to print the variable, then it's actually going to print what it contains, what it holds, which is 5. So now it says hello world 5. So here's some other examples just in case you want more. What would you do if you wanted to declare a variable to hold whole numbers and you want to call it x? You would then put int x. You could declare another one, int y, int z. It goes on and on. You can then assign them values assign vals to variables, and say, okay, I want x to hold 5. I want y to be 4. I want z to be 2. Some shortcuts would be assigning the values while you're also declaring, right? Some shortcuts would be assign and, declare and assign. Let's do it the other way. And assign in one line of code. So now we can do int a is equal to 3. So again, here you're declaring the variable, and then at the same time, you're going to go ahead and give it an initial value of 3. So when we print it out, it works the same way that it would if you use 2 lines of code. So A is going to be 3, and it prints out 3. Now, let's keep going. The last thing that we talked about is the ability to then work with simple mathematical operations in Java. So that is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The to the power of, or the exponent operation, is not done with the caret key. Please do not use that. Many beginner programmers will be tempted to use it, but it's not something that is a part of the Java language. We will go over it later, and I'll show you how to do that. But the caret key uses something else. Of course, the caret key is this key, right? So you guys are used to writing it down like that. That is not how you do it in Java. Please do not do that. So let's do subtraction. So we can do z is equal to x minus y. Division, z is equal to x divided by y. Multiplication, z is equal to x times y. And then finally, what are we missing? Oh yeah, by the way, the multiplication is done with the asterisk, not x, right? So again, multiplication is with the asterisk. And then of course addition. How could I forget addition? Addition, z is equal to x plus y. There you go. If we wanted to print out the results while we're doing that, we can just do system.out.print line z. So now when I run it, it's whatever the final value we assign to z. So the code will run line by line from top to bottom. So even though you assign the value of z here, you're actually reassigning it here, and then you're reassigning it here, and then finally the final value that z contains is whatever last line of code that assigns it a value. Imagine if you were to rename yourself twice or 3 times. That's exactly what you're doing here. You're reassigning the value of z. And so there we have it. That was kind of the lecture from today. I want to make sure you could have something to review, so that you could come to class feeling like you could contribute to any discussion and kind of start remembering this stuff. Of course, the assumption would be that you need the notes in the next couple of days to remind yourself. Alright, and I think that's it. Cool. Stop the recording.